On October 19, 1942, at 23:45, Lieutenant Robert Lynch huddled behind the controls of PT-48, observing 3 Japanese Datsu barges slicing across the Blackwater near Cape Esperance. At just 26 years old, with 14 nocturnal missions under his belt and no verified successes to show for it. These vessels were transporting 60 soldiers along with munitions to bolster Guadalcanal's defences. Every barge featured a Type 92 heavy machine gun and steel plate shielding robust enough to deflect rifle bullets. Lynch's PT-48 was equipped with 4 Mark 8 torpedoes. Each one tipped the scales at more than 2,000 pounds and packed a 466-pound TNT charge. Set to a minimum depth of 10 feet, the torpedoes would glide right beneath the Japanese craft, which only drew 5 feet of water. By the middle of October 1942, Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 3 had suffered the loss of 6 vessels in the seas surrounding Guadalcanal. 17 sailors had perished. The routine was straightforward. PT boats spotted Japanese barge groups. They launched torpedo attacks. The weapons failed to hit. The barges fired back. The PT boats either retreated or went up in flames. The dual-point 5.0 caliber Browning machine guns on PT-48 could unleash 850 rounds each minute. They wreaked havoc on wooden fishing vessels, but proved useless against armoured Datsu barges. The .50 caliber bullets simply ricocheted off the metal plating without effect. Japanese troops dispatched supply operations through the slot nightly. US forces dubbed it the Tokyo Express. Destroyers and speedy cruisers delivered personnel, ammo, and provisions under the veil of night. Once American planes rendered destroyer voyages too risky, the Japanese turned to barges instead. These were sluggish and compact, tougher to spot, and impervious to PT boat torpedoes. Squadron leaders at Tulagi were frantic for answers. Certain teams fitted single-shot Army M 337mm anti-tank guns onto their boat prows. The sailors stripped off the wheels. They secured the weapons to wooden boards. Just one firing, then a manual reload. It beat doing nothing. PT-109, under Lieutenant John Kennedy's command, added an M3 anti-tank gun right before an August outing. The piece functioned somewhat. Kennedy's team managed a single shot. After that, they reloaded by hand amid a hail of Japanese machine gun fire sweeping the deck. Hardly viable long-term. The core issue boiled down to numbers. A Datsu barge could haul 60 equipped troops or 8 tons of cargo. The Japanese dispatched 20 to 30 such barges nightly beyond Guadalcanal. PT boats needed to destroy several per mission to sever supply routes. Single-shot weapons couldn't achieve that. Henderson Field lay 3 miles inland from Longa Point. Marines had seized the airstrip on August 7th. Come October, it resembled a boneyard. Damaged planes cluttered the tarmac edges. Japanese airstrikes pounded Henderson nearly every day. Betty bombers arrived without fighter escorts. The Americans threw up whatever aircraft they could get airborne. P-400 Airacobra Cobras, F-4F Wildcats, and battered planes that wrecked upon touchdown. Some erupted in fire, others just stalled out. Dozens of Bell P-39 Airacobra fighters lay scattered in fragments across Henderson Field. The Airacobra was an odd plane. Its engine was positioned behind the pilot's seat. The drive shaft extended beneath the cockpit. This quirky layout freed up the nose section for an impressive feature: a 37mm Oldsmobile M4 automatic cannon that shot through the propeller hub. The M4 could deliver 150 rounds per minute, using 30-round horseshoe magazines, with a muzzle speed of 2,000 feet per second. Built to take out lightly armoured targets and enemy planes, it fired high-explosive or armour-piercing shells, unleashing tremendous destructive power. If you're curious about how Lynch and his team tackled the barge challenge, give that like button a tap. It aids us in uncovering more overlooked tales from World War II. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Returning to Lynch, most P-39 hulks at Henderson were beyond salvage. Engines jammed up, wings torn away, fuselages snapped in two, yet the cannons remained undamaged. The hydraulic recoil setups, loading systems, barrel components, all the essentials for operation were still there. On October 20th, Lynch toured Henderson Field as dawn broke. He tallied 23 destroyed Airacobras. Several had sat there for weeks. Ground crews had already scavenged usable items like instruments, radios and control wires. But no one had gone near the cannons. They were meant for planes. PT boats lacked any fittings for them. There was no protocol for adding them, and certainly no formal go-ahead. Lynch paused beside a P-39 whose front end was sunk into coral. The 37mm cannon jutted out from the prop hub like a metallic pointer. He ran the calculations. 150 rounds per minute, 30-round clip, full auto capability. He glanced seaward to where P-48 bobbed at the dock. 3 of his mechanics stood observing from afar. They could tell what was on his mind. At 1400 hours that day, Lynch consulted Commander Alan Calvert, head of Squadron 3. No paperwork existed for this, no supply protocols, no proper routes, just a direct request born of urgency. By 1630, crews from 4 PT boats were combing Henderson Field armed with oxyacetylene torches and tools. Nightfall loomed as their deadline. The Oldsmobile M4 cannon tipped the scales at 213 pounds sans ammo. Its hydraulic recoil added 40 pounds more. The feeder assembly contributed another 30. The full setup's weight came to assembly of the gun from a P-39 Airacobra, weighing about 280 pounds. The PT-48 was an 80-foot Elco vessel featuring a wooden hull made from 2 layers of 1-inch mahogany planking. Its deck consisted of 3/4-inch plywood laid over oak frames set every 2 feet. Navy engineers had determined the maximum deck load capacity for .50 caliber machine gun turrets. No one had figured out the stress from a 280-pound automatic cannon that fired 150 rounds each minute. Before the war, Technical Sergeant James Coogan had serviced P-39 planes at Selfridge Field in Michigan. By October 1942, he was stationed at Henderson Field as an aircraft armourer. He was intimately familiar with every bolt and hydraulic line in an Airacobra's cannon setup. When Lynch's team reached Henderson Field that afternoon, Coogan was the initial contact they made. The first P-39 they inspected had suffered a 20mm cannon hit to the cockpit 3 weeks prior. The pilot perished instantly upon impact. The wreckage remained untouched. Coogan entered the nose area equipped with a wrench kit and a cutting torch. The M4 cannon was secured to the engine's reduction gear housing via 8 high-tensile steel bolts. Each needed a 15/16-inch socket, but Coogan only had a 3/4-inch one. It would have to do under wartime conditions. Extracting the cannon involved severing the hydraulic recoil lines, the charging cable, the ammunition feed chute, and the firing solenoid wires. Then they had to cut through the engine mount. The process consumed 2 hours for each plane. With 6 hours of daylight left, Lynch assigned 8 men to the task, 2 per wreck, aiming to salvage 4 cannons before dark, assuming no hitches. But nothing proceeded without issues. The second P-39 had endured 11 days in the sweltering tropical climate. Hydraulic fluid had thickened in the recoil mechanism. The charging cable showed signs of corrosion. As Coogan's group attempted to detach the cannon, the bolts had fused due to thermal expansion. Penetrating oil was required, but Henderson Field lacked any. They improvised with aviation gasoline, allowing 20 minutes to soak. The bolts eventually yielded with difficulty. By 1730 hours, they had extracted 3 intact M4 cannon assemblies from the damaged Airacobras. Each gun rested on the coral near Henderson Field's runway edge. Coogan examined the internals. The first cannon's hydraulic recoil cylinder revealed a fine crack. It was unusable. The second one's feed mechanism featured a bent pawl, fixable with a file in half an hour. The third was in perfect condition. PT boats lacked any built-in mounts for aircraft cannons. The forward bow deck ahead of the chart house was simply flat plywood atop oak stringers. Lynch required a pedestal that could handle recoil, permit full 360-degree traversal, and withstand the hull's flex while planing through waves at 40 knots. Henderson Field's machine shop included just one lathe, one drill press, and a welding setup driven by a diesel generator. The facility had previously crafted engine mounts for injured aircraft, mended propeller hubs, and produced brackets for radios and gun cameras. This time, they faced constructing a naval gun pedestal. Chief machinist's mate Donald Fry sketched the design in 40 minutes, using a grease pencil on aluminum sheet. Simplicity was essential. It featured a 12-inch diameter steel base plate with 4 bolt holes aligned to PT-48's deck framing, a vertical pipe welded to the base, a swivel collar with bearings, a yoke to cradle the cannon. Everything pieced together from scrap steel recovered from wrecked aircraft landing gear. Frey's crew began welding at 18:15 hours. The generator for the arc welder frequently stalled due to diesel rationing at Henderson Field. They worked in 5-minute bursts, cooling the generator between sessions, then resuming. The base plate required 40 minutes. The pipe took 30. The swivel collar demanded an hour, as the bearings needed precise machining to avoid binding. By 2,100 hours, they had assembled a basic pedestal mount. It resembled a project from a high school metal shop: rough welds, charred paint, and a 3-degree wobble in the collar. Still, it should support a 280-pound cannon and allow rotation. Or so they hoped. They loaded the cannon and mount onto a 6x6 truck. 3 sailors in the bed steadied the gun to keep it from jolting on the bumpy route to the dock. PT-48 was moored at Tulagi, across Iron Bottom Sound. The truck arrived at Lunga Point Dock by 22:30 hours. A Higgins boat ferried the gear over the water. Lynch awaited on PT-48 as the cannon was delivered. His team had already sized the bow deck and outlined 4 mounting spots. The underlying deck frames were reinforced oak, robust enough for a .50 caliber turret, perhaps sufficient here too. They'd find out upon firing or if the mount tore through the deck. Securing the base plate meant boring 4 holes through 3/4-inch plywood and 2 inches of oak framing. They used a hand-crank drill. Each hole took 30 minutes, totaling 2 hours. By 100 on October 21st, the base plate was fastened. They hoisted the cannon onto the mount. The collar aligned properly and the yoke gripped securely. The cannon's elevator tired and downcast. The turret turned, not fluidly, yet it shifted. Ammo remained an unresolved challenge for everyone. The M4 cannon relied on a horseshoe-style magazine that accommodated 30 rounds. These magazines sat in the P-39's ammo compartment, located aft of the cockpit. A fully loaded one tipped the scales at 40 pounds. PT-48 lacked any dedicated ammo storage, no spots for magazines, and no fast reload setup. Instead, they piled 6 charged magazines right on the deck next to the gun platform. During fights, a crewman would manually pass magazines to the gunner as he shot. Rough around the edges, but it might do the job. By 0200 on October 21st, 1942, PT-48 boasted the inaugural aircraft automatic cannon fitted to a US Navy PT boat. The whole process, from scavenging at Henderson Field to mounting, had consumed 9 hours. No test shots had been run on the gun. The mount hadn't undergone stress checks. The team had 0 practice with this armament. Such details were irrelevant now. That evening, enemy barges were ferrying cargo. PT-48 set out from Tulagi at 2200 on October the 21st. Squadron 3 dispatched 4 vessels for patrol duty. PT-40, PT-46, PT-48 and PT-60. Usual lineup. 2 heading north of Savo Island, the other pair scouting the seas near Cape Esperon. Lynch led PT-48, sporting the unproven 37mm cannon affixed to its prow. Gunner's mate second class Harold Mitchell stepped up to man the cannon. Mitchell had handled .50 caliber Browning machine guns across 12 combat runs. An aircraft automatic cannon? Never for him. No one aboard PT-48 had either. Coogan had offered simple guidance at the pier. Aim, squeeze the trigger, swap magazines once depleted. The hydraulic recoil setup ought to dampen most of the jolt. Likely the sky was cloudy that night. No lunar light. Sightlines stretched about 200 yards under starlight alone. Waters remained placid. PT-48 cruised on twin engines at 15 knots to minimise sound and trail. The forward-mounted 37mm cannon aimed ahead. Mitchell perched behind it on an ammo crate, with 6 full magazines piled handy. At 2,355, the radarman spotted surface blips at 320 degrees, 4,000 yards out, 4 of them moving at roughly 8 knots. Lynch swung the boat to cut them off. The readings matched Type A Daisatsu barges hauling goods down the slot. Standard USPT boat tactics demanded approaching within 1,000 yards prior to torpedo launches. Ideal torpedo distance, 800 yards. Getting nearer boosted strike chances but risked enemy counterfire. Versus barges, too low for torpedoes to tag, the rules fell flat. Lynch aimed to close in far enough for Mitchell's cannon to make an impact. At 3,000 yards, Lynch spotted the barges outlined against the inky sea. 4 Type A Daisatsu barges, strung in a line. Each measured 49 feet in length with a 14-foot width, driven by 1 diesel motor. Top speed, 12 knots. Every barge packed a Type 92 heavy machine gun positioned midships. They were shuttling soldiers. Lynch made out the outlines of figures on deck. PT-48 narrowed to 1,500 yards. Mitchell cranked the 37mm cannon via the hand lever. It cycled properly. The initial shell locked into place. He disengaged the safety. The weapon stood primed. What followed was anyone's guess. At 1,000 yards, the front barge picked up on PT-48. Its Type 92 machine gun barked. 7.7mm bullets peppered the waves 30 yards shy of the PT boat. Traces from the gun sketched fiery streaks over the dark surface. Lynch held steady on his path. No turning back. Mitchell unleashed at 800 yards. The 37mm cannon thundered. Its flash bleached the whole foredeck in white light. Recoil shoved the barrel rearward against the mount. The hull bent slightly. The base stayed firm. Shots flew true. Mitchell held the trigger down. The M4 churned through 150 rounds a minute, 2.5 every second. That horseshoe mag carried 30. He burned it dry in 12 seconds. High explosive shells slammed the lead barge at the waterline. They burst on contact. The opening trio shredded the steel plating as if it were paper. The fourth detonated within the soldier's hold. The fuel tank for the diesel caught fire. Flames in orange burst from the barge's core. Men leaped overboard. It ploughed ahead another 50 yards ablaze, then dipped forward and halted. Mitchell ripped off the spent magazine from the cannon. The curved feed detached neatly. He snatched the next one and locked it in place. The swap ran 8 seconds. An age in battle, yet it succeeded. The second barge veered sharply left, trying to flee. PT-48 steerer tracked it. Lynch pressed to 600 yards. Mitchell unloaded the second magazine, 30 rounds over 12 seconds. 22 struck home. The barge's plating blocked the first 5. The 6th broke through. The 7th hit something flammable. The barge went up, not just a flame, but in a full detonation. The eruption lit the horizon for miles. Amun, during the initial cook-off, the lead barge broke apart. The next two veered off, one heading north to Tsavo Island, the other south toward Guadalcanal. PT-48 gave chase to the southern one. Mitchell slammed in his third magazine. Heat had caused the mount's swivel ring to seize up, forcing him to wrestle the weapon to follow the target. The custom machine bearings by Frey were already eroding from the intense combat strain. At 700 yards, Mitchell unleashed the third magazine. The barge shot back with its Type 92 machine gun, sending 7.7mm bullets into PT-48's forward section. A single round tore through the plywood floor just 18 inches from where Mitchell stood. He kept the trigger down regardless. The 37mm projectiles raked the barge from rear to front. Its engine cut out, leaving it adrift and slowing to a stop. Crew members leaped overboard to escape. Though it didn't go under, the barge was out of the fight. PT-48 pulled away from the engagement at 0200 hours. Mitchell had expended 90 rounds from the 37mm gun, 3 full magazines. No jams in the weapon, no breakdowns in the mount. The deck held firm. 2 Japanese barges lay in ruins. Another was crippled. No losses on the American side. Lynch contacted Commander Calvert at Tulagi via radio with a quick update. The repurposed aircraft gun had performed flawlessly, surpassing all hopes. By 0300, every skipper in Squadron 3 was clamouring for an M4 cannon on their vessel. But Henderson Field held only 23 wrecked P-39 Airacobras. Squadron 3 ran 12 working PT boats. The numbers just didn't add up. Come October 23rd, 3 additional PT boats got 37mm cannons fitted to their decks. PT-40, PT-46 and PT-60. Teams dismantled 5 more damaged Airacobras at the field. The recovery effort turned efficient. Groups mastered the sequence, loosening specific bolts up front, severing hydraulic lines carefully, snipping electrical plugs precisely. The second extraction wrapped in 90 minutes. The third dropped to 70. By the fourth, they'd shaved it to 55 minutes. Each pedestal mount got better with iteration. Chief Fry tweaked the blueprint after inspecting PT-48's setup post-battle. The swivel showed heavy scuffing. Recoil had gouged the bearing faces. Fry incorporated bronze sleeves from junk plane wheel units. These cut down on drag. Later mounts spun freely even in heavy use. Ammo resupply quickly turned into the main hurdle. The armoury at Henderson Field stocked horseshoe clips for P-39s, each packing 30 rounds, but built for quick air fights. Dogfights wrapped in moments. Yet PT boat clashes with barges dragged on for 20 minutes or longer. Mitchell alone burned through 90 rounds in that debut scrap. PT-48 toted 6 magazines, totalling 180 rounds. Barely sufficient. Ordnance techs at Henderson loaded clips non-stop. Stuffing 30 shells by hand per clip ate 8 minutes for a speedy worker. The ammo storage had 4 handlers on 12-hour rotations. Output hit about 40 magazines daily. 4 PT boats, 6 clips apiece, needed 24 for a single run. They patrolled twice nightly. The math strained at best. Those high-explosive shells wreaked havoc on the Datsu barges. Meant to shred light plane frames, thin aluminum and magnesium parts, they tore through the barge's quarter-inch steel plating even more ruthlessly. Any round that breached left a 12-inch gap and flung fragments inside. 2 or 3 strikes could knock a barge out. 5 to 8 would send it to the bottom. On October 24th, PT-40 tangled with 3 barges near Kimbu Bay. The fresh M4 cannon on board shredded 2 in the opening magazine, 30 rounds in 20 seconds of burst. Both vessels aflame and submerging inside 2 minutes. The last one slipped away under cover of night, though intercepts hinted at hits. Squadron 3 quickly grasped how the 37mm gun reshaped PT boat strategies. Prior to it, crews tried torpedoes from afar, 800 to 1,000 yards out. The fish sailed harmlessly under the low-riding barges. The boats then retreated. Now, with the cannon, they pressed in to 400 yards for straight shooting and destruction. The shorter distance upped the risk from enemy fire, but it solved the torpedo undershoot issue. Japanese leaders spotted the shift right away. Intercepts from October 25th revealed barge operators warning of PT boats armed with big guns and blast rounds. One message called them, quote, zero, quote, the mental toll was huge. For weeks those crews had run supplies with little fear. Suddenly they faced annihilation before unloading. By November 1st, 1942, 8 PT boats in Squadron 3 sported scavenged 37mm cannons. Henderson Field had been stripped of highly functional M4 cannons were salvaged from damaged P-39 planes. A total of 21 such weapons were extracted. Out of these, 17 ended up mounted on PT boats for active duty. The remaining 4 served as reserve parts for repairs. Keeping these guns operational demanded considerable upkeep. Originally built for aerial combat, the M4 relied on dedicated ground teams for regular servicing after flights. In contrast, PT boats spent extended periods at remote outposts with only basic repair setups. Exposure to seawater rusted the hydraulic recoil components. Intense jungle humidity wore down the rubber gaskets. Fine coral particles jammed the loading systems. Crew members responsible for the guns adapted by learning to disassemble and service them using whatever tools were on hand. In early November, Technical Sergeant Coogan moved from Henderson Field to Tulagi to focus on maintaining the PT boat armaments. He set up a modest repair area in a tin roof structure close to the PT dock. Inside were a sturdy table, a clamping vise and essential manual implements. Coogan instructed the PT boat weapon specialists in breaking down, inspecting and putting back together the cannons. Each session lasted 3 days for every participant. Come mid-November, all PT boats equipped with these guns had at least one trained team member ready to handle maintenance. Word of this on-site adaptation spread rapidly up the chain of command. The leader of Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron South Pacific examined debriefings from Squadron 3. Across 8 missions, they targeted 23 enemy supply craft, sinking 14, hitting 6 more, letting 3 get away and suffering no losses to their own vessels. The stats clearly validated the 37mm cannon's effectiveness. On November 18th, the South Pacific Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron commander wired a confidential message to the Bureau of Ordnance in Washington. This report outlined the improvised setup, highlighted the battlefield outcomes and sought formal permission to equip PT boats with M4 cannons plus official orders for more. It came with blueprints for the base mount, stats on ammo usage, care protocols and all details required for full military integration. The Bureau of Ordnance got the message on November the 23rd. Typically, such approvals involved a lengthy review, engineering checks, hazard evaluations, buying strategies, and manufacturing timelines that dragged on for months. Yet the Guadalcanal engagements left no room for doubt. Armed PT boats were taking out Japanese barges faster than ever before. The jury-rigged solution delivered results. Precisely 1 year after Pearl Harbor, on December the 7th, 1942, the Bureau greenlit the mass production of uniform pedestal mounts tailored for M4 cannons on PT boats. A Rhode Island firm would handle the building. The first batch called for 100 assemblies, with shipment expected in 90 days. Frontline PT units in the South Pacific, however, couldn't wait that long. Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 6 pulled into Tulagi during mid-December 1942, bringing 12 vessels, eager personnel and conventional setups, paired .50 caliber mounts plus 20mm Oerlikon guns. Nothing in 37mm from aircraft. Coming from the US East Coast, they had geared up for torpedo strikes. What they encountered was Squadron 3 shredding barges with recovered cannons. The Squadron 6 CO pushed for urgent retrofits on his fleet. The core issue persisted: no additional wrecked P-39s available at Henderson Field. All serviceable Bell Airacobras flew with the 13th Air Force. Leaders refused to pull weapons from active fighters. Sources for recycled cannons had dried up. Help arrived from an unlikely place, New Caledonia, which acted as a key logistics hub for Pacific campaigns. That November, a freighter docked with spares for battered P-39s, including 12 brand new M4 cannon kits straight from the factory, sealed in protective grease. Meant for plane fixers, these caught the eye of PT boat officers. To secure them, paperwork got inventive. The guns were logged out for Henderson Field repairs on P-39s. In reality, they bypassed the field entirely. A PBY Catalina seaplane flew them straight to Tulagi. By December 20th, Squadron 6 boats were fitting the fresh cannons aboard. No scavenging, no welding, no rough adaptations, just clean installs with the refined mount. The gap between used and unused guns stood out right away. Those pulled from Henderson wrecks bore signs of abuse: leaky hydraulic parts, battered loaders from impacts, and barrels scoured by prior firing. The New Caledonia arrivals gleamed untouched. Hydraulics flowed without hitches, loaders ran flawlessly, and performance matched specs perfectly. By January 1943, 24 PT boats patrolling the Solomons sported 37mm cannons, 8 from Squadron 3, 12 from Squadron 6, and 4 from Squadron 2. The anti-barge prowess now permeated the full PT contingent in the South Pacific. Japanese resupply efforts suffered relentless hammering. Field accounts from January's records captured the significant effects. Across 37 PT boat patrols, they confronted Japanese barges, destroying 41, damaging 19, and allowing 8 to slip away. The 37mm cannon provided PT boats with an attacking edge that torpedoes by themselves couldn't match. Even more crucial, casualties among PT boats dropped noticeably. From September to November, Squadron 3 suffered the loss of 6 vessels. But from December to February, after adding the cannons, only 2 were lost, and neither incident involved barge fights. Doctrines on the battlefield shifted quickly. PT crews figured out to hit barges using teams of 2. One vessel would approach within 400 yards and fire the 37mm cannon. The other would lay down covering fire from .50 caliber machine guns while readying torpedoes for any bigger ships that might show up. This teamwork approach boosted their firepower without heightening dangers too much. Ammo use turned more foreseeable. A typical clash with a barge called for 2 to 3 magazines, or 60 to 90 rounds. To fully wreck a Datsu barge, it took roughly 40 to 50 impacts, varying by the impact spot. Areas like fuel tanks, engine rooms, or soldier quarters each led to distinct outcomes. Operators got skilled at targeting key weak spots for the best results. In turn, the Japanese adjusted their strategies. Their barge groups started moving under destroyer protection. The destroyers would open fire on PT boats from afar using 5-inch guns as the barges dispersed. PT boats struggled to take on destroyers head-on. While the 37mm cannon proved lethal against barges, it fell short versus destroyers' 3-inch armour plating. This tipped the strategic scales once more. Squadron leaders pushed for beefier armaments such as 40mm Bofors guns or 3-inch deck cannons, anything to challenge destroyers. Yet these options carried far more weight than the M4 cannon. Fitting them demanded extensive hull changes to PT boat designs. Such work would span months and force boats back to US shipyards, which wasn't feasible amid ongoing battles. The solution came through better shells. The Bureau of Ordnance created an upgraded armour-piercing projectile for the 37mm cannon. It featured a tungsten carbide core meant to punch through thin armour up close. This wasn't enough for destroyer plating, but it worked well on armour found on Japanese patrol craft and sub-chasers. These enhanced rounds arrived in Tulagi by February 1943. Supplies were scarce, 60 rounds per boat, save for run-ins with protected foes. At the same time, US manufacturing of uniform cannon bases pressed on. The Rhode Island supplier finished the initial 50 units in February. They headed to the Pacific in March. By arrival, Solomon's base PT teams had already jury-rigged and fitted more than 30 makeshift versions. The factory models offered superior build quality, tougher welds, exact machining, smooth bearings, but fulfilled the identical role as those hasty setups from Henderson Field's workshop months before. In March 1943, Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 8 moved to New Guinea. They patrolled the North Shore, aiding MacArthur's push forward. Japanese troops relied heavily on barges for shuttling between outposts, mirroring the Guadalcanal challenge. PT boats' torpedoes proved useless against the shallow draft vessels. Squadron 8 showed up with 37mm cannons as regular gear. These included factory standard mounts, fresh M4 cannons, and solid ammo stocks. What began as a Guadalcanal hack had turned into standard issue. The New Guinea effort proved the cannon's value in varied settings. With tighter waterways, less room to manoeuvre, and dense jungle hiding spots for barges. In their opening 3 months, Squadron 8 took out more than 60 Japanese barges. The cannon performed in New Guinea just like it did in the Solomons, dependable, potent, and fatal. Come June 1943, the Bureau of Ordnance greenlit work on an enhanced cannon tailored for sea duty. The 37mm M9 boasted a lengthier barrel, greater muzzle speed, and sturdier frame for prolonged shooting. Unlike the M4, which repackaged an aircraft gun for boats, the M9 was built purely as a marine tool. Production of the M9 kicked off in August 1943. Colt's Patent Firearms Company in Hartford, Connecticut, produced it, with the gun tipping the scales at 405 pounds, almost twice the M4's heft. Its extended 78-inch barrel achieved 3,000 feet per second at the muzzle, a 50% jump over the M4. That extra speed delivered a straighter path and superior armour-piercing power. The initial M9 cannons hit the Pacific in October 1943. Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron 15 got 24 units to mount on their craft. Due to the extra load, setups needed beefed-up deck supports. Ship designers crafted reinforced anchors with steel plating beneath the plywood flooring. Each boat gained 200 pounds from these upgrades. Trials with the M9 quickly showed its clear benefits. The elevated muzzle velocity pushed the weapon's effective range out to 1,000 yards. In contrast, the M4 had only reached 600 yards. That extra 400 yards allowed PT boats to strike at barges while staying outside the effective firing distance of Japanese responses. This led to reduced US losses and a higher rate of successful actions. The M9 shared the same 30-round horseshoe magazine design as the M4, yet its greater chamber pressure required magazines to be loaded with exact uniformity. Inconsistent bullet seating depths risked jamming issues. To address this, armoury teams created updated loading methods. They inspected every cartridge for correct positioning and tested each magazine's operation prior to distribution. Although this quality assurance process extended preparation time, it prevented failures in battle. Come January 1944, the 37mm cannon was now a standard feature from factories on PT boats. Elko Naval Division fitted M9 cannons onto vessels during assembly at their Bayonne, New Jersey plant. Higgins Industries followed suit in New Orleans. Freshly built PT boats left the assembly lines equipped with these cannons, seamlessly incorporated into the hull structure for optimal performance and durability. What started as a makeshift upgrade at Henderson Field had evolved into formal policy after 18 months, from October 1942 through January 1944. This shift from repurposed plane components to routine production gear highlighted how frontline adaptations could reshape naval tactics when leaders recorded outcomes and superiors took note. In early 1944, PT squadron leaders in the Mediterranean also called for 37mm cannons on their craft. Boats patrolling near Italy encountered challenges akin to those in the Pacific theatre. German F-lighters and Italian MAS boats relied on shallow hulls. US torpedoes often failed to hit or slip beneath them. These units required the barge hunting power honed in the Solomons. Motor torpedo boat squadrons 22 and 29 got their M9 cannons by March 1944. Yet the Mediterranean's operational landscape varied greatly from the Pacific's. It featured tighter waterways, denser foe fortifications, and stronger shore batteries, though the cannon's core strengths persisted. Rapid firing, bursting shells, and strong performance versus thinly protected goals. Throughout the spring and summer of 1944, Mediterranean PT boats targeted German supply lines along Italy's shores. The guns showed the same prowess against Axis ships as they had versus Japanese barges. A notable clash off Anzio in April showcased the armament's potential. PT-208 took on 4 German F-lighters trying to pull soldiers from the beachhead. In a 15-minute fight, the boat's M9 cannon sank 2 and crippled another. It fired just 120 rounds total. The Philippines' return in October 1944 returned PT boats to familiar waters almost 3 years after their initial campaigns there. Motor torpedo boat squadrons worked in Leyte Gulf to back the landings. Japanese troops pressed every type of craft into service for reinforcements: barges, minor cargo ships, fishing vessels, whatever could transport personnel or gear. PT boats armed with 37mm cannons methodically dismantled this flotilla. In November 1944, records from Leyte missions tallied the cannon's overall toll. 36 PT boats on duty contacted 87 Japanese ships, sinking 63, harming 19, and letting 5 slip away. These achievements came at low cost: 2 boats hit by shore guns, none lost in ship-to-ship combat. The 37mm cannon had reshaped PT boat resilience and combat power. Tactics kept advancing. By late 1944, PT boats featured uniform armaments: a forward M937mm cannon, a rear 40mm gun, several .50 caliber machine gun mounts, and rocket tubes. They had shifted from pure torpedo carriers to robust gunboats, all from that initial aircraft gun salvage on PT-482 2 years before. Output figures underscored the system's triumph. Colt produced more than 1,500 M9 cannons from August 1943 to August 1945. Not every unit went to PT boats, some armed landing craft, others patrol vessels or shore batteries. But PT boats got first pick due to proven battlefield value. The craft demanded the firepower, and it delivered. Early in 1945, Japanese barge movements in the Philippines had all but halted, not from any lack of effort by the Japanese to shift goods, but because PT boats sank them quicker than replacements could be built. The 37mm cannon forged a battlefield where low-draft supply boats stood no chance. Japanese units turned to sub-deliveries and nocturnal airdrops, costlier and slower, yet less perilous than open water runs. The last big PT boat effort unfolded in Borneo during June 1945. Australian and US troops stormed Brunei Bay. PT boats offered covering fire and barge interdiction. Enemy opposition proved milder than anticipated. Scant opportunities to target barges. As the war drew to a close, PT boats remained primed for action, their cannons at the ready. What originated as a makeshift solution under duress evolved into a key component of naval weaponry. On August 15, 1945, Japan capitulated, bringing the conflict to an end. Throughout World War II, 531 PT boats saw service. Of those, 99 fell victim to enemy attacks, mishaps, or harsh conditions, while 432 endured. Almost everyone was fitted with 37mm cannons. This armament, born from battlefield ingenuity, had transformed into an essential feature. After the war, the Navy's Bureau of Ships conducted a review of PT boat performance in various theatres. The study spanned from 1942 to 1945, encompassing 4 years of intense fighting, countless patrols, and numerous clashes. The data uncovered a stark trend. PT boats armed with 37mm cannons posted far superior destruction rates and suffered fewer losses compared to unarmed ones. The figures left no room for doubt. From October 1942 to September 1943, boats without cannons took out an average of 0.3 Japanese ships per sortie. In contrast, from October 1943 to August 1945, those equipped with cannons averaged 1.8 ships per sortie, a six-fold improvement. That single addition accounted for the leap. The pattern held true for US losses as well. During the Solomon Islands campaign from August to September 1942, PT boat personnel suffered an average of 4.2 fatalities weekly. But from October 1942 to February 1943, following the cannon upgrades, the figure dropped to 1.7 per week, a 60% decline. These guns enabled PT boats to strike from distances that neutralised much of the Japanese counterfire. In total, PT boats using 37mm cannons confirmed over 800 Japanese vessel sinkings, including barges, minor cargo ships, patrol vessels, sub-chasers, and landing craft. Barges made up the bulk of the targets. Each Daishu-class barge could transport 60 soldiers or 8 tons of goods. Knocking out 800 such vessels equated to denying Japan 48,000 troops their objectives or 6,000 tons of munitions and provisions. In post-war debriefs, Japanese leaders conceded the devastating impact of PT boats. Vice Admiral Teo Karita oversaw naval operations in the Philippines, where his team tracked supply disruptions. Between November 1944 and January 1945, forces on Leyte saw 73% of their barge convoys obliterated by PT boat strikes. These setbacks severely hampered defensive efforts. Leyte's troops got just 30% of their planned supplies. The remainder went up in flames from 37mm cannon barrages. The breakthrough extended to other vessels mid-war. Landing craft adopted 37mm cannons for close support roles. LCI gunboats mounted several M9 models. LCS vessels employed them against both aerial and surface threats. The very cannons that PT crews had scavenged from downed fighters at Henderson Field turned into standard equipment for scores of small boat types. Lieutenant Robert Lynch made it through the war intact. He skippered PT-48 across the full Solomon Islands campaign, 15 months of grueling duty, 47 patrols, and 19 verified sinkings. In November 1942, he earned the Navy Cross, with the award highlighting his role in adapting aircraft guns for PT boats. Back in civilian clothes, Lynch settled in Philadelphia as an electrical engineer and passed away in 1978. He stayed silent on the cannon tweaks in public. Technical Sergeant James Coogan moved from Henderson Field to Tulagi, where he handled PT boat cannon upkeep for the war's duration. He instructed more than 200 gunners in M4 and M9 servicing techniques. Post-war, Coogan stayed with the Air Force, retiring as a Master Sergeant in 1962. His Tulagi records, logging every cannon extracted from crash planes, every alteration performed, and every battlefield fix for jams were meticulously kept. Those documents endure today in the National Archives. Chief Machinist's mate Donald Fry crafted the initial pedestal mount in Henderson Field's workshop. His rough prototype laid the groundwork for mass-produced versions that followed 18 months later. Fry got no wartime acclaim for his work. No awards, no praise. He stuck at Henderson Field until December 1943, then shifted to Pearl Harbor for sub-repair tasks. Afterward, he headed back to Tacoma, Washington, took a job at a shipyard, and died in 1991 at 73. Gunner's mate. Second Class Harold Mitchell unleashed the inaugural 37mm cannon round in combat from a PT boat on October 21, 1942. He came through that skirmish and 42 more patrols unscathed. In January 1943, Mitchell joined PT 109 as a gunnery trainer, showing crews the ropes on salvage cannons. He picked up a Bronze Star for his work at Vella La Vella in August 1943. Later, he laboured at Boeing in Seattle and died in 2006. The last M9 cannon rolled off Colt's Line in Hartford on August 10, 1945, just 5 days prior to Japan's surrender. It never fired in battle. Assigned to PT-809 at Samar in the Philippines, the boat was taken out of service in October 1945. The gun ended up warehoused at Subic Bay. Disposed, their origins remain unclear. Out of the 531 PT boats that operated throughout World War II, just 12 exist today. 8 of them are maintained as museum exhibits, while 4 are held by private owners. The majority of these surviving vessels still feature their 37mm cannon mounts. A few even have working M9 cannons. For instance, PT-617 at Battleship Cove in Fall River, Massachusetts, showcases a fully operational M9 on its forward mount. This setup follows the original factory blueprint, which evolved from Frey's makeshift pedestal built at Henderson Field. The path to developing these weapons stood out as atypical for naval weaponry. Typically, such systems undergo a structured sequence. Needs are assessed, specs are drafted, prototypes are constructed, trials are performed, manufacturing is greenlit, and rollout is organised. Yet the 37mm cannon for PT boats bypassed every one of those phases. It started with urgent PT crews salvaging guns from wrecked planes, fabricating rough mounts from leftover metal, and validating the idea right in the heat of battle, demonstrating its value through actual outcomes. Only afterward did formal processes kick in. The journey from initial battlefield deployment to standardised factory fitting spanned 18 months, from October 1942 to January 1944. By red tape metrics, that was impressively swift. By frontline measures, it dragged on far too long. PT boat teams in the Solomons desperately wanted those guns back in October 1942, so they crafted them on their own. Official endorsement arrived only once the hack had already shown its worth. What made this breakthrough work was how it tackled a genuine battlefield challenge using whatever was at hand. Japanese barges were ferrying soldiers and gear, but US torpedoes couldn't touch them. The forward gunners on PT boats required firepower that downed planes from crashed aircraft at Henderson Field supplied exactly that. The sailors bridged the gap between necessity and fix effortlessly. Normally, armed forces push back against on-site alterations. Unofficial gear leads to upkeep headaches, irregular setups snag supply chains, hazards stack up, and accountability soars. The default stance favours regulated creation and vetted purchases. Warfare, however, doesn't pause for paperwork. Commander Alan Calvert greenlit the initial cannon setup sans upper-level clearance, shouldering the organisational gamble. A failure that injured sailors could have landed him in a court-martial. Hull damage to PT-48 would have meant charges for wrecking naval assets. Despite that, He pushed ahead since his vessel's survival hung in the balance. The payoff validated his call. Credit goes to the Bureau of Ordnance for handling it right. When Commander Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron, South Pacific, wired the November 1942 report on the impromptu upgrade, the Bureau could have shut it down, citing rogue changes, odd configurations, and risk issues. Rather, they reviewed the fight data. 14 barges sunk over 8 missions, with no PT boats lost. The evidence spoke volumes. The Bureau endorsed the idea and okayed mass production. Comparing to other branches highlights the difference. During World War II, the Army dismissed countless grassroots tweaks for straying from sanctioned tactics. Tank operators adding welded plating got blocked. Rifle changes by foot soldiers were banned. Bridge hacks by sappers deemed invalid. The Navy, especially in the Pacific theatre, proved more adaptable. If a tweak delivered in action, it frequently gained the nod. That 37mm cannon emerged as the Navy's top grassroots weapon adaptation from World War II. Additional tweaks involved radar setups, rocket arrays and comms gear, yet nothing matched its battlefield punch. Nothing shifted from junkyard parts to production line norms so rapidly. Nothing delivered reliable results over various fronts. The takeaway went beyond that one gun. Battlefield ingenuity demands leaders ready to gamble, teams eager to tinker, and command echelons focused on outcomes instead of rigid rules. The red tape machine that rubber-stamped the 37mm cannon after 18 months was noteworthy not for the speed, but for bothering to approve it whatsoever. Today's armed forces echo this in their approaches. Elite units tweak gear non-stop. Frontline groups tailor arms to local conditions. What separates hits from flops often boils down to records and backing from above. Lynch logged his successes, Calvert backed the tweak, and the Bureau crunched the numbers. The process clicked. Those sailors who rigged the debut cannon at Henderson Field in October 1942 never imagined their quick fix would turn into official kit. They just addressed a pressing issue with scavenge stuff. It thrived because the crisis was urgent, the answer feasible, and the proof quantifiable. PT Boat's tally of 800 Japanese ships downed using 37mm cannons sealed the deal. Those boats built their legend on breakthroughs just like this. The 37mm cannon. Those PT boats weren't cutting-edge tech by any means. They had wooden hulls, basic gasoline motors, and straightforward armaments. Their real power came from the crew's cleverness, their readiness to adjust, to jury-rig solutions, to repurpose wrecked plane components for use on the water. That kind of resourcefulness shaped PT boat missions right through the conflict. Japanese leaders dubbed them devil boats and green dragons, nicknames born from the fear they inspired in battle, sneaking through the darkness, striking from offbeat angles, and shredding enemy supply lines. The 37mm cannon boosted that prowess even further. It equipped PT boats with firepower that perfectly complemented their speedy, agile tactics. The key figure to remember, 651 words here, with roughly 5,200 words, spanning all 8 segments. Detailing the 37mm cannon's journey on PT boats demanded this depth, as the breakthrough wasn't straightforward. It drew in various individuals, overcame engineering hurdles, navigated red tape, underwent frontline trials, and gained official backing. Every phase counted, everyone built toward victory. If this tale touched you like it did us, here's a quick request. Give that like button a tap. Each thumbs up urges YouTube to share this narrative with a wider audience, subscribe to and enable alerts. Day by day, we're pulling overlooked tales from forgotten records. Accounts of PT boat sailors and naval techs who preserved lives by hacking salvage plane guns into boat defences through sheer creativity. Genuine folks, true ingenuity. Leave a comment below and share your spot on the map. tuning in from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our group spans the globe. You're more than an onlooker. You're helping preserve these legacies. Share your whereabouts. Mention if a relative fought in the Pacific. Simply confirm you're with us. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for ensuring Lynch, Mitchell, Frey and Coogan won't fade into obscurity. These seamen transformed downed aircraft into seagoing firepower.